At the Global Liver Institute, we believe it all starts with a patient. So what happens when a patient, a liver patient no less, one of the 500 million people living with conditions that often go undiagnosed, untreated, or misdiagnosed, mistreated, and stigmatized, brings the challenges of liver patients front and center? And what happens when a patient then leads a discussion with world experts in policy, research, clinical care, and wellness on ways to overcome these challenges? Let's find out today on GLI Live. Hello and welcome. I am so excited to be able to start this month of October. October is for livers. This entire month-long campaign, acknowledgement, highlights, spotlighting, and celebration of innovations in liver cancer and in liver disease as a whole. To start this month, this campaign with Dr. Ned Sharpless, the head of the National Cancer Institute, is just such an honor. I just really could not be more pleased. So today, for this brief amount of time, we will be talking about the National Cancer Act at 50 and the prospects for ending liver cancer. Such an important area to highlight. So I would more formally, and as his very long bio is in the introduction, I would just love to spend the episode reading it because it is so illustrious and august, but I guess we should get to the questions and the conversations. But Dr. Ned Sharpless is the 15th director of the National Cancer Institute, and he's here to kick off our October is for Livers campaign. Welcome, Dr. Sharpless.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's really great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the NCI's portfolio in liver cancer research.
We really appreciate it. So I really just wanted to start giving people a little context about the number of new cases of liver cancers in the United States are increasing, and they have been increasing for the past 16 years, even though we've seen so many other successes in other types of cancer, which are declining. And so just wanted to try to understand and have my viewers understand what's so challenging about liver cancer.
Yeah, liver cancer is really interesting cancer from an epidemiology point of view. It's got there are a number of things that cause liver cancer, and their relative importance in the United States is changing. So, a while ago when I was in medical school, the leading cause of liver cancer in the United States was viral hepatitis, chronic hepatitis, and hepatitis B and hepatitis C and other kinds of hepatitis. And that is still an important cause of liver cancer. And worldwide, that is certainly the leading cause of liver cancer today. But in the United States, those viral hepatitis-induced cancers declining. Other things, though, like obesity and alcoholism, are increasing as causes of liver cancer. And so there's this shifting kind of epidemiology, and we think the pathogenesis of those cancers is somewhat different, and perhaps even the ways to deal with those cancers would be somewhat different. And, against, as you mentioned, against that backdrop, in many cancers, we're seeing a decline in incidence and certainly a decline in mortality. But liver cancer is not one of those, where we're seeing increasing incidence and also increasing mortality. It's still a very challenging cancer to treat. We haven't had some of the same advances in liver cancer that we've seen in other cancer types. And so it's this complicated shifting epidemiology, combined with a real, lack of great progress in terms of therapeutics that have made it increasing in incidence and a bigger and bigger problem for the United States.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we're so excited to be able to partner with you to shine a spotlight and accelerate research and other therapeutic and care advances in this, to bring it up with the rest of the successes with other cancers. The NCI has such a large portfolio across so many different types of cancer, but can you share with us the very robust role that you do play in advancing liver cancer research?
Right. So we have a wide portfolio of research for liver cancer, and And by the way, the important related problem of liver metastasis of other cancers, which has some of the same issues and is also a big problem for cancer in the United States. And that really starts at, basic science, real investigation of how does a liver cell become a well-behaved, benign liver cell become a malignant cancer cell. And that's an important scientific question that we try and understand, and the relationship between the basic, liver biology and, say, the immune system, and why the immune system doesn't clear more liver cancers, and we wish it would, for example. And so, ways to engender a different tumor milieu, for example. We also fund a great deal of epidemiologic research to try and understand those shifting patterns of things that influence liver cancer, and to try and attribute, molecular features of those different causes of liver cancer to the actual liver cancers themselves, to see if that has implications. And then we also have a large portfolio of therapeutic research, or clinical trials or screening trials to try and develop new methodologies to detect and prevent liver cancer. And that's a big clinical trials portfolio. And then it's important that when you have such a wide gamut of activities, to try and integrate them, to try and make sure that the best scientific ideas are being handed off to translational research, or being handed off to clinical trials research, et cetera. And there's a lot of stuff, and it's grants to extramural scientists who work at academic institutions to do science. It's the SPORE program, which we have a few liver cancer spores that do sort of translational research and clinical trials in liver cancer research. We have screening trials. We have an intramural program called the Liver Cancer Pooling Project that's trying to round up as many cancers with epidemiologic features as possible. We have a new blood test that we've been trying to develop inside the intramural program for liver cancer. So lots and lots of, and I could go on, but lots and lots of activities. Because it's, I think it's not obvious today what is the best way to take on liver cancer, whether it's screening, prevention, treatment, something else, and so I think the NCI is really obligated in an important cancer where we haven't as much success like liver cancer to really try all of them, to try and support all of these areas in the hopes that some combination thereof will start to benefit patients more.
We really appreciate that. I think that, patients who are diagnosed with liver cancer, whether it's hepatocellular carcinoma or bile duct cancers, hepatobiliary cancers, or if they have a cancer that, as you pointed out, metastasized, from some other area of the body, to know that the National Cancer Institute is putting together really such a comprehensive research agenda for all of us is comforting and gives hope. Whether it's from the genetics to innovations in testing is so exciting to hear. I think that many patients with liver cancer, because the awareness of liver disease as a whole is so low, and they might not have known that they had any liver disease whatsoever until they're diagnosed with liver cancer. And so there's such a huge learning curve, and such a feeling of aloneness. And so to know that there are researchers across the National Cancer Institute, across so many divisions and departments that are approaching the many issues and challenges from all these different directions, I think is really exciting and gives patients so much hope. So thank you for laying that out for us. Our path in our theme for this October is a path to equity in liver cancers. And so, we know that there is low participation in clinical trials overall, in oncology clinical trials even, but certainly from different communities, participation in clinical trials in cancer, knowing that they have that opportunity, knowing that often the most cutting edge treatments could be in a clinical trial in cancer is not something that's often or as well communicated to African Americans and Hispanics. And so I just wanted to understand, I know that you are working on diversity in cancer research in so many different facets. And so how is NCI sort of progressing along that path to equity in cancer research?
Yeah, I think, and thank you for your leadership on this topic. I think the NCI appreciated, well, let's say for the topic of cancer health disparities, the NCI has had a focus on this for a long time, and we have really tried to address why certain populations have less good outcomes with cancer for a while. Although I would say that in recent years, like the last couple, that push has been further invigorated because of the real focus on health equity that you mentioned that is across the NIH and across biomedical research. And so I think even though we've been working in cancer health disparities for a while, it's a fair question to ask, are we doing it the right way? Are we spending enough on it? Are we asking the right questions? Are we using the right technologies? Additionally, probably a little more than a year ago, we started the NCI Equity and Inclusion Program to try and sort of bake health equity into everything we do at the NCI across all of our efforts. And it kind of comes down to three areas. So I already mentioned one of them is our health disparities portfolio, and we are actively looking at that to try and make sure it's the right thing. And that has issues like, clinical trials accrual and research of important types of research questions and, classical health disparities research. Also, though, I think we appreciated that we need to do a better job of diversifying the cancer research workforce, that for a variety of important reasons, we think the scientific workforce and the caregiving, the clinical workforce should look like the patient populations they serve in many ways. And, frankly, we did extensive analyses, and this is where the NCI still has some work to do. We found that, not enough of our grants are going to independent scientists or of underrepresented populations. So we don't have enough Black and Hispanic scientists, for example, in our so-called, RPG pool, the pool of monies we use to support investigator-initiated science. And I think, there's some things the NCI can try and do to address that, including, training programs and so an example of this would be, for example, the CURE program that we've had, which tries to identify individuals at early stages and who have showing promise in biomedical research and keep those people interested in biomedical research through support and mentoring. But additionally, I think there are some other things we can do, and we have to, very aggressively try and eliminate that sort of disparity that exists in our workforce pool. The third area, though, that we looked at and I think realized we still have some work to do is in the NCI culture itself. I've been on listening tours across the institute to really hear about the problems of equity, inclusion, and diversity within the NCI workforce. And I think that is an area where we've done a lot of data analysis and really try to earnestly understand what it's like to be an employee at the NCI from an underrepresented population. And there, I think there are also some of the data are not as good as we would like. And I think we have to really work hard to make sure that we recruit and retain individuals from disparate backgrounds, and also with regard to gender, where we do not have enough women in leadership at the NCI. So we're trying to focus on health disparities, diversifying the workforce, and improving our own culture. And all of these are things, I think, where there's some good news. We're addressing disparities. I think the RPG pool is diversifying, and I think the NCI culture is it's a good place to work. People are happy at the NCI and believe in the mission. But all three of them are areas where we certainly can do better, and where we need to continue to focus a lot of effort. And how that applies to liver cancer, I think, is readily obvious, right? Liver cancer is a cancer where there are significant disparities in outcome exist. And certainly the NCI should be focused on addressing those disparities for certain populations. And it's about both race and ethnicity, but also access. There are issues of, rural cancer or hepatocellular carcinoma in rural settings. It's a disease that needs intensive treatment that's often multimodality, and, that can be hard to get away from a specialized cancer center. So, the healthcare disparity challenges in liver cancer, I think, are obvious. Why we need a diverse workforce to take on liver cancer, I think, is easy to understand, given that, it's a disease that affects certain populations. And then lastly, I think that the NCI culture, has to see this as a cancer that's important, that needs, this earnest effort and really devoted research. And so I think, our efforts to address all three of those areas will benefit liver cancer research as well.
I think they all, work synergistically to reinforce each other. And one of the questions that I got from one of our regular viewers when they knew that I was going to have the opportunity to talk to you is about this issue, particularly of encouraging more more researchers of color, and or just those who want to research issues in health disparities and health equities. Is there now or in plans for training in reviewing grants that involve health equity? Because it's something perhaps that is new. I remember when PCORI started, and the training for grant reviewers in what patient-centered outcomes research needed to look like. And so I was just wondering if the same type of sort of new training in evaluating perhaps different types of grants that may be coming through from the new types of researchers that you're encouraging to come forward.
Yeah, I think it's an important point is that about half of the NCI's budget or more is dispersed through peer review, is where we grants are evaluated, and that's how we decide how we spend our money. We rely on experts to help us decide what are the best proposals, and that right. structures ensconced in law. That is how we're the NIH awards funds, and it's a good process. I think that we are good at finding the best science and funding it that way, and it's a real pillar of American biomedical research. But if the reviewers aren't good, if they're not well trained to review the grants they're reviewing, trouble can ensue, and that has certainly been a problem for certain topics. There are a couple of things the NCI can do. First of all, I think we should say that the NCI now funds on the order of $500 million of health disparities research a year, and we have tons of training grants to try and develop individuals to work in those topics. And so I feel like we have almost through this investment over a period of time, created a community of health disparities researchers who provide a pool for reviewers. And so the expertise in health disparities research is much better today than it was when I started out in this field. And it's credit both not only to the NCI's work, but I think really the health disparities research community has been very, very good at drawing attention to this problem and trying to bring enthusiasm to the field, but also in a very positive way that it has been winning, and I think has won over the research community. And so I think that's an important step. I think and having people who are well trained and with the expertise in an area is critical. Another thing the NCI can and does often do is if it as you know, most of the review of grants is conducted by the Center for Scientific Review, a different part of the NIH that we then rely on them to help score our grants. But when we think there's an area where there is a real specific missing expertise, where we don't think the community is quite ready for that kind of a grant, but we believe it's a cutting edge research area, we can create our own review panels. So we have the ability to impanel our own special study sections to really work on specific topics, and we do that, and we certainly have done that in disparities research, where, as you point out, that is lacking. But I think the long-term solution here, and the most important solution, rather than individual training for peer review or specialized study sections, those are important. But the long-term solution is to get a diverse pool of researchers who are expert in the relevant fields and who come from a diversity of backgrounds, who understand why cancer in rural settings is important, why cancer in underrepresented populations is important. And that is a hard problem. We've been working at this for a while, but I am optimistic this is also an area where the NCI can encourage and promote a greater diversity within the workforce. We have to do it for lots of reasons that are important to society, not the least of which is it's really good for science. The scientific achievement will be best with such a workforce, in addition to it being the moral and right thing to do. So that is, I think, our most important long-term focus here.
Well, as you pointed out at the beginning, the liver is such an interesting challenge, and liver cancer has so many facets, and so it would seem to me that it would provide a really very rewarding career for a liver cancer researcher, that it would never be dull, and there are plenty of problems to be solved. So I for one, will do my part to encourage more hepatologists, more oncologists, and others to go into this area. We were also helping to provide patient-generated data on the experience of living with liver cancer, and I think that there are rich data points and certain questions that patients and caregivers have that we would love to have answered and partnered with researchers. And so, I think it's an exciting area where we have seen a lot of movement and successes on the therapeutic and even on the diagnostic side. And so, yes, I will, happy to do our part to encourage people to go into this area of research.
I fully agree with that. I think it's, whatever you're interested in cancer, even human biology, liver cancer is there because it's this interesting epidemiology. It's got, prevention and screening. There's a therapy approach. There's even surgery and transplantation and other stuff like that. And I think it's an area where there are some good ideas, but it's still clearly an area where we need more progress. So I think it is a great topic for a young researcher, scientist, or caregiver to get into, because certainly we don't expect any one single idea to poof make this problem go away. We think it's going to require a variety of solutions, and that really has been the secret to success in cancer across the board. And I expect that paradigm will work in liver cancer as well.
As we try to create a culture of participation in clinical trials amongst liver patients, amongst people of color, hearing this focus and commitment on diversity and equity from within the government, from within NCI, and encouraging this type of research, I would hope would give patients greater confidence and trust to participate in research. I remember being, asked by one of my doctors to go down the hall. I was an inpatient at the time, and to go down the hall and to talk to another African-American, patient. And, she was rather, shocked that, that I had had a transplant, that I had had all the care. Originally it was, my treatment was for colorectal cancer, and before my transplant, and she just, it was shocked at all the care that had been poured into me, all the commitment of my physicians, frankly, all the cutting edge innovation at the time. Some of the medications I was on still had letters and numbers that we were using. And, the fact that she could see that someone that looked like her had been, cared for so well by the team, and it benefited already from innovation in research. From then on, she was like, sign me up. I'm ready. And, and she's also, lived a, long and healthy life. But she wouldn't have if the trust in the medical system and in the research enterprise wasn't there. And I was so excited to be able to, to work with my physicians to give that to her. And so I hope this conversation gives that type of trust and confidence to liver cancer patients, that there is this entire enterprise that is working to help them. To help them and their families, have a better outcome than the generation before.
That's right. I mean, I think the federal government is 100% behind what you said. We think that our job is to end cancer suffering, or as President Biden says, is end cancer as we know it, which is a good goal. And the NCI is tasked with realizing that goal. And I think when the president said that, he meant in cancers we know it for all kinds of cancer, including liver cancer, and he said in cancers we know it for everybody with cancer, not just rich people or specific populations. Right. So we really are focused on ending cancer suffering for all patients. Clinical trials is a really important part of that. That is how we make progress for patients and patients with liver cancer. And having diverse clinical trials where the patients come from all kinds of walks of life is a really important part of clinical trial success. So I agree with you. Anything that we can do to help patients feel confident in participating in clinical trial is really, really important. The NCI has done a number of things to do this. We tried to research, why people don't go on trials or why they're averse to clinical trials, and that's an interesting set of topics. One of the things we've learned is that there's some lack of trust around biomedical research, as you mentioned. But another big barrier is just that clinical trials can be a hassle. You got to drive 3 hours and sit in traffic to go to the cancer center. You got to take a day off from work. You got to pay in childcare. You got to pay for parking and that stuff. So we've heard that, and we've done a number of things to try and make it easier to for patients to find clinical trials. So we have a hotline, 1-800-4-CANCER, that will pair patients up with clinical trials if they call. We have open trials now through our InCore network at like 1,100 sites nationally, so people won't have to go to some site that's really, really far away. And we're trying to, and that, by the way, has been a particular success in getting to underrepresented populations, to have trials open where people live in both rural communities and communities that don't, have great access to big, large tertiary care centers. So those are some of the things we've been doing. We additionally, have a new program called CUSP-2CT, which is this connecting underrepresented population clinical trials. That's a new funding announcement we just announced, which is going to create this network to do further study on this topic of accrual to minority clinical trials and try and identify new approaches to help with this. And certainly much more we have to do. We also are very interested in clinical trials of liver cancer globally, not just with the United States, but this is an area that's really fruitful for global cancer research. And I've argued strongly that the NCI should be heavily invested in global cancer outside of the United States for lots of reasons. But one of the really best reasons is that it's easier to do certain kinds of trials outside of the United States. And liver cancer is one of those diseases where it's common in the US, but it's really common worldwide. And so it may be faster to study it in places that have in a country outside of the United States for other reasons. So I think that that is something we'd like to see happen as well, is try and conduct these trials so that we can learn from patients in other countries and really accelerate progress for all of us.
I think that's so important. The Global Liver Institute is global. I've enjoyed reading your recent paper in JAMA about NCI's work outside the U.S. and the Center for Global Health. I think that is so important. I'm often asked about the question about what does diversity mean when constructing a global clinical trial. And it is a fascinating question to make sure that you end up with medications and therapies or other types of interventions that work for different populations and in different countries. When I first started the Global Liver Institute, I remember, talking to some of my colleagues in Japan and Taiwan and explaining that, the liver here in the U.S. just didn't have any, attention or prominence, where in many Asian countries in particular, because so many people have viral hepatitis and end-stage liver cancer and even pediatric liver diseases are more recognized. And so there was just a context and a recognition of the liver there that doesn't exist here, or that didn't until we've been working on increasing and elevating that knowledge priority about the liver. But I agree with you that partnering with countries that are endemic with liver disease and where liver cancer is a very highly prioritized public health challenge, we can learn a lot, and I think we can advance a lot of this research. And so that's very exciting. And probably one of the things that people didn't know about the National Cancer Institute, that you had this global health center as well.
Yeah, so our Center for Global Health is celebrating its 10th anniversary. It was started by Harold Varmus, who was then director of NCI, the Nobel laureate and esteemed scientist Harold Varmus. And, Harold told me at the time that he thought the NCI had a moral obligation to work on this. And Harold's right. We do have a moral obligation to address cancer globally. But I think there's also something clearly in it for us. I mean, we all learn faster. International cooperation is good for all. And I think it's a really good use of federal monies. So I very much support these initiatives to try and, work with our colleagues in other countries to accelerate cancer research. And I think liver cancer is a really good example of why we should do that.
Fantastic. So how can the Global Liver Institute and all of our patients and caregiver partners, all of the stakeholders of our Liver Cancer Council, which are medical societies and academic institutions, many NCI designated cancer centers, how can we all help to advance and make a wonderful next 50 years of the National Cancer Institute? How can we help?
Yeah, well, conversations like this, where you do this work to bring attention to liver cancer and the research needs are, I think, really, really important. And so thank you for that kinds of work. You mentioned the National Cancer Act. We are nearing the 50th anniversary. Well, actually, it was signed in December of 1971. So we're very close to the 50th anniversary of the signing of that. And, that was a really important act. It did a number of things. It provided some funding to the NCI. But I think probably more important than that, it gave the NCI a bunch of research capabilities, like, Frederick National Lab. It made the NCI director presidential appointee. It created the National Cancer Advisory Board. It directed the NCI create a national database of cancer statistics, which is the SEER program. It led to the creation of the Modern Cancer Center program that I think has been very, very successful. And I think that so now 50 years in, it's a good time to sort of commemorate that anniversary. It has to be said that I think when that bill was passed, the thinking was we'd have a solution for cancer in 5 years by the bicentennial. That would be a present we could give the president on the nation's 200th birthday. But cancer turned out to be a much harder problem. But now we look back at the last 50 years, and it's clear that we have made a lot of progress. But there's still areas where we need to make more progress, and liver cancer is definitely one of those areas. So, we need to, that's why we're commemorating that. We're not celebrating this anniversary. I mean, 600,000 people still die in the United States. But it's important to see what's gone thus far and where we made progress, but where we still have a ways to go. And we really, I think, need the help of the community in talking about this anniversary, in groups like the Global Liver Institute, talking about what's worked in cancer research and why this has been, in some ways a successful research endeavor, but also, making it clear to the public and to Congress what more we still have to do. I do believe the present time of cancer research, we will look back on it someday as a golden age of cancer research, when that, decades of biologic research actually translated into many different treatments to help address cancer and really culminated in a period of really rapid progress against cancer mortality, which is what we're seeing now. But I think that even though I believe that's how we'll think of it, right now we still need to really press on the accelerator and try and further these advances and make sure they're experienced by all patients with cancer in all diseases, including the cancers that have proven less easy to treat, like liver cancer, but certainly an area where I think there's a lot of opportunity for new thinking. And so, the work this group is doing is very, very important. We have to make sure patients understand about clinical trials participation. We have to make sure the public understands about the opportunity for benefit, and we have to make sure Congress understands this is still an area where we need a lot of support.
Well, we were happy to reinforce all of those messages, and we look forward to working with you, sending our A3 patients up to help in advisory positions and review positions, and lending the patient perspectives into the work of the National Cancer Institute. And certainly from a policy perspective, we are supportive. As one of the deadliest cancers, we know that we rely so much on you and your success. So we stand side by side with you to ensure that happens. And we thank you so much for your commitment every day, but particularly today, in taking this time with us.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for your work on behalf of patients with liver disease and liver cancer specifically, and really for, as it meshes with the work of the NCI. It's been a real privilege to talk today, and I look forward to working together in the future.
Fantastic.
Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. Join us weekly on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Time for more episodes of GLI Live. Check out our website, globalliver.org, and follow us on social media to learn more about the Global Liver Institute and stay up to date with the latest in liver health. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay connected.